And good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Allen. Cordell away from the desk tonight. For a third time, golfer Steve Stricker has won the Sanford International Golf Tournament. We're going to hear from him about his victory a little later. But first, that tournament played host to some very special guests today who have a story to tell about service and their love of country. Parker Brown with our top story this evening.
As some of the top golfers in the world faced off, spectators took in the festivities. None more special than an outpost of local heroes. Sanford honored active military members, retired veterans, and first responders with free admission through this weekend.
How wonderful it is to have your own area so you can converse with some of the veterans and have an opportunity to see what's going on here. It's a beautiful spot. I mean, we're right in between 17 green and 18 tee box, so it's a heck of a fun time for us all.
Jerry Denman and 4 other members of the Northeast South Dakota chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America saw an opportunity to not only take in a day of golf, but to honor the flag.
A lot of people have made the ultimate sacrifice for that flag. It's something we should honor and keep that tradition going.
They traveled from the Watertown area and spent a majority of their time rotating, as one stood by the flag when the flag stick was taken out. With an act of respect and honor, they hope to spark conversation about the VVA and the Vietnam War.
I think a lot of the history of Vietnam is disappearing because it's 60 years old. I think we're getting a little bit of visibility into the public again. It's important to us because we're being recognized as well by the public here.
The veterans received handshakes and thank yous throughout the day from spectators, the caddies, and the golfers. When they came home from the war, they witnessed and experienced poor treatment. Today, they received the hero's welcome they deserved. In Sioux Falls, Parker Brown, Dakota News Now.